And we're back once again. Friday night, Destination Unknown.
Where are we going?
We never know where we're going to go because it's Destination Unknown. Vin and Dave here, back again. I'm excited for this show. I feel like it's something that we've teased. I feel like we've teased this topic.
We totally have. And it's kind of come in tangentially, into other conversations. But specifically last week, the concept of the Ummim and the Thummim came up.
Yes.
And, maybe we can start with that. But first.
Well, for those people who were not here last week, the topic is ancient technologies.
Yes.
Or is it ancient technology?
Oh, no. So really more like lost technologies of the ancient world.
Boom. I like that a lot better. So it's not like we're not doing ancient astronauts. We're doing like real, actual things that you have probably not heard of. I don't have Göbekli Tepe on my thing. I don't have any
neither.
Graham Hickok type of. I've got like the actual. Is it Graham Hickok? Is that his name?
Oh shoot! Now I can't think of it. I knew it before.
I was
you
wanting to
asked,
say because now Hitchens is going into. I think it's Hickok. Graham Hickok. We're not doing that.
No. There won't be any. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it was aliens. There's not going to be any of that stuff. What I really enjoy about this topic is that there are still, to this day, things that were legitimately accomplished in the ancient world. Mm-hmm. We don't know how they did it. Mm-hmm. It's either there's insufficient evidence, or in some cases, a thing was thought to be completely mythological until they found one.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, kind of like the city of Troy, right? It was like, oh, it's a total myth. It doesn't exist. And then, oh, look, we found it.
Got it.
Yeah. So same kind of thing with this.
Much better show than Göbekli Tepe, I think, or Zecharia Sitchin or Ancient Aliens or whatever. But first, wine sponsor?
We do. So this week it is Nashua Liberty. Nashua Liberty is a great group of people, libertarian-minded people. Now, you don't have to be a libertarian to go hang out with them. They hang out every Sunday night. They do like a 6 o'clock Sunday thing at a local restaurant here in Nashua, New Hampshire.
I'm there often.
Great group. Everyone is welcome. It's a social gathering. Of course, there's a lot of political talk, but it's not required, right? You can just sit there and talk about comic books if you want. Mm-hmm. Great group of people, and they have actually provided a note and some wine. Mm-hmm. So this is a Rodney Strong 2014 Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's
pretty damn good.
I know, I like it a lot.
You cracked it open, and I was like, man, it smells great to start out with. Like,
it smells fantastic. Tastes even better.
Did they send over a note?
They did, and I do love this note. So, Vin and Dave, Nashua Liberty would like to thank you for spending your Friday evenings in Nashua, bringing your listeners to destinations unknown. We always enjoy the topics and the banter, and of course, we look forward to hearing what the wine of the week is. And of course, this week, it is provided by Nashua Liberty. They also include, thank you for making Keene the number 2 city in New Hampshire for crypto philosophy. Winky face.
Oh my God. I am gonna catch hell. I'm gonna catch hell the next time that I get out to co-host Free Talk Live, man. They are gonna give me shit. I mean, I guess Portsmouth is number 2, or fuck it, Nashua. Yes, just because we're here is good enough. It's good enough.
It's good enough.
Well, they've only got cryptocurrency. We've got crypto terrestrials.
That's true. And crypto philosophers.
There you go.
We're crypto philosophizing.
So I don't know where to start this thing. I mean, I only have one technology, but I think mine is probably the oldest.
Ooh, okay. Let's go with that.
Okay. So it's one that we have talked about on the show, or that I have mentioned on the show before. The reason why this one is so interesting to me, and I think maybe it's a good jumping off point, is because I feel like this was the let's go back. I was going to say, I feel like this was the first technology that might actually be called a technology, and that this was the thing that bootstrapped everything.
Yeah, but fire's a technology, so,
Right, so you've got fire. I was also, I said that, and then I thought, no, speech. We've been speaking for only 35,000 years. But only. Well, because humans have been on the planet as Homo sapiens for about 250,000 at least, if not longer, in our current biological form.
Yes.
So it's like for 200,000 of those years, human beings did not speak to each other as you and I are speaking to each other now. Somebody invented speaking.
Yes.
And
crazy, right?
That has been the most powerful technology by far that we have ever possessed. Certainly more powerful than fire.
Wow. What about money? More powerful than money?
Yeah, you can't have money if you don't have if you can't talk about it.
That's right. You can't make a deal.
That's right. But this one, because we talk so much about ancient Egypt, we talk about the fact that that's the root of so much of what we would call civilization.
Yep.
And so many of the technologies, we've talked about how it's the root of religion and all of this. This, I believe, is the technology, and I think that this, and a great many archaeologists would agree with this, this is the technology that is at the root of Egypt itself, the civilization of Egypt.
Wow.
Okay. We're talking about Nabta Playa. Most people have never heard of this. It's in the Nubian Desert. The site is in the Nubian Desert. It's about 800 kilometers south of modern-day Cairo. All right. By the 5th millennium BC, the people in that area had fashioned what may be among the world's earliest known archaeoastronomical devices. So it's contemporary to the Gozek Circle in Germany and the Menajdra megalithic temple complex in Malta. So basically what it is this is like a Stonehenge type of looking thing. It's in the middle of the desert, and it's a calendar circle, alignment of stones. It's a megalith. These alignments of stones that are indicating the approximate direction of the summer solstice. They know that for sure. In 2005, this astrophysicist named Thomas Brophy, so they've known about this place for quite a long time. This astrophysicist, Thomas Brophy, got satellite imagery so that he could get very precise mappings of where these particular stones were laid out. And then he basically traced it back. He figured out that 3 of them stood for Orion's belt.
Okay.
Which incidentally, and this is why I say that this is a technology that carries through, the 3 Great Pyramids at Giza are laid out in Orion's belt.
Yeah, it's a very identifiable arrangement.
Yes.
Like once you see it, then you start recognizing it. You know,
Yes.
and it's basically 3 in a line, but one's offset, and it's very recognizable across the ancient world. So that's incredible.
So the years here, we're talking about 4,800 BC, he traced it back for Orion's belt, for sure. Then he said that the inner circle was probably at a later date. Near the calendar circle, though, which is made of smaller stones. So that's a more precise calendar circle. It's almost as though there's this big circle, then there's this middle circle, and then there's a smaller circle that's more about like during the year getting these different things. The largest one, the megalithic stones, they align to the same stars in the calendar circle. They're all at the same epoch, though, 6270 BC. So what he was able to do was he was able to say because he's got the star charts and he can do the computer modeling of what the sky would have looked like at this particular location. He was able to trace it back and say, oh, this was definitely made with an alignment in, it could only have been this time or this time, 6270 BC. So the calendar circle with Orion's belt was sometime between 6400 BC and 4900 BC, which also matches radiocarbon dating of campfires that were around the circle. Now, what's interesting about this, it's in the middle of the Nubian Desert. It's 20 miles away from the Nile River. That's the closest area to the Nile. It's 20 miles. It's a 20-mile trek into the desert of Nubia in 6270 BC.
From where the Nile is now.
From where the Nile is now, but the closest place where it is a cataract that's near the Aswan Dam. This particular location, the Nile actually would have been farther away, actually.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And interestingly, we know where the Nile was because of what I will get to there were some temples built, weirdly enough, that by some of the individuals very close to some of the Egyptian individuals that we've been talking about in the past. So to give you some idea, this is 6270 BC.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient Egypt, as we understand it, the first idea of it, the two kingdoms, Upper and Lower Egypt, didn't start until 5500 BC. So this is at least 1,300 years, right? But
Wow.
could be, right? So
And you were saying that the different circles were built at different times,
different times
separated by like 1,000 years, right? I
could be up to 1,000 years. Yes.
so
So
it goes
people
back.
were in this area doing these calculations for thousands of years.
Yeah, and that goes back to the point from, I don't know if it was last year or the one before that, but where you were saying that things would not change for hundreds and hundreds
Right.
of years. And it's like these people had been there doing their stargazing and creating these monuments because all their ancestors had done that. And it's the only thing anybody knew.
So
It's crazy.
what's interesting about this is, why is Orion's belt important? This is the question. Well, Orion's belt points at, if you look at it in the sky, if you pull up, like if somebody Googles, first you can Google Nabtaply, it's pretty interesting. If you Google Orion's belt Sirius, basically Orion's belt points right down at Sirius. And the important thing about Sirius to the Egyptians was when Sirius would rise, they call it the heliacal rising of Sirius. That meant that it was like literally 2 weeks later, the Nile would flood. So this is how this was their
Yeah.
agricultural timing, right?
It's a good thing to know.
So this is a Nile agricultural society that predates Egypt. It predates Egypt. To give an idea, unified Egyptian civilization, what we understand as the Egyptian civilization, 3200 BC. This means this is 3,000 years before ancient Egypt.
Wow.
And as far as we know, there isn't a predecessor invention of this. The Great Pyramid, completed in 2560 BC, right? So we're looking at like 4,000. This is 4,000 years before that. Moses dies 1400. So you figure this is 5,000 years before Moses.
That's crazy.
It's the distance from when Nabta is built to Moses.
It's further than Moses to us.
It's further than us to the beginning of ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
It's that, so it's like to give you this broad swath of time. So what's interesting, I was saying, in Pharaoh Ramses, 19th dynasty, Ramses II. So these are the people that came sort of after the Akhenaten 18th dynasty mess that happened. Built two temples in this town called what's now called Abu Simbel, and this was in about 1250 BC that they were building this. Basically, these giant statues carved into this mountain. What's weird is it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it is the closest location on the Nile to Nabta Playa, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And this is a very, very famous, but what's so interesting about it is that it's also set up, the way that it's set up, it's carved into the mountains, and it's set up so that sunlight comes in on 2 days of the year, October 22nd and February 22nd. And there's gods lined up inside. People still go and witness this. There's gods lined up inside, and except for one, Ptah, who's the god of the underworld, all the rest of them get lit up by the sun on these 2 days, except
wow.
Ptah stays in the dark,
That's cool.
right? What I find interesting about it is that it's like, this is almost, I feel that they must have known that Nabta Playa was there. They must have known that this was a kind of a sacred space, and these were the priests, again, sort of showing the extension of their wisdom. Like, not only can we do the stars, we can do the sun, we can do, like, we can time things out. And I feel that this is really, as I've thought about this particular technology and this particular monument, this is the invention of history. Because before this, how do you really know where you are? Like, I'm sure people knew that there was a cycle,
Sure.
right? But how do you know where you are precisely on that cycle unless you are this? So this is the birth of astronomy, astrology. It might be the birth of religion. It certainly is the birth of understanding of cycles, and it's that old.
Yeah.
It was ancient to the ancient Egyptians. So you figure the priest cult that was there, what an invention.
It's incredible. And, it's the first calendar.
Yep.
It's crazy. Yeah, I had not even heard of Nabta Playa until last week's show. And, I looked into it. I didn't bring anything on that, but it's fascinating to think that, especially when you look at it through today's eyes, right? When you look at it through today's eyes and it's like, okay, we're going to spend generations looking at stars and trying to figure out the movements and, when things happen and blah, blah, blah. Nobody has patience for that anymore. But these people, these ancient people, put in the time and the effort because to them it was important to know, when the stars rose in a certain place, what Orion's belt was doing, what Sirius was doing, and, then document that.
Well, but document it in stone because this is before writing, certainly.
Sure. But the stone, not only provided permanence, but it also was very practical, right? So, it was a lot easier to describe a concept when you could actually just lay it out in large form on the desert floor and just walk people around and go, this is what you look at when that happens. And this is what just explain. It's a giant mechanism.
Well, I guess that I hadn't thought about this before, but really think about it from a standpoint of put yourself in that situation. Well, we know the rocks go back to 6270. How long was there something there before they were like, you know what, these things the sand keeps getting it gets all this, we need to, how was there wood first? Was it some sort of wood thing? Did they put some sort of marker there and then they decided, no, it's worth it for us to quarry some stone and drag it the hell out here? And why is it so far away from the Nile?
Well, so two questions. One, I had this awesome visual of this elder, with a stick, drawing lines in the desert floor and really being super careful. And then somebody coming along and scraping their feet through the lines and messing them up. And he's very angry. And he's like, screw it, I'm going to go get some rocks. And then, that would actually be my other question. Why there? Was there at one point some kind of oasis? How did they calculate that was the right place?
Or maybe it was just we need to get very, very far away. And because it was really that they needed to know during it was to give them precision. They would have known kind of where they were at a particular time of year, right? But what they were going for is the precision of when is the Nile going to flood, right? The rising of Sirius gives them about 2 weeks before the Nile is going to flood. Maybe in that area it was less because it's further south, right? So when it was, Memphis and all of those as the capital, then it was 2 weeks. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's a week. So it probably gave them time to get, okay, it's today, then to walk back, right? But we've got campfires, these, so many ancient archaeological campfires that we know that groups of people were camping out there over long periods of time, or maybe it was just a shaman and an apprentice.
Maybe it was just an outpost.
A priest and an apprentice. Well, no, I'm thinking that the reason it's so far away is probably, and maybe they were navigating to get to it by the stars as well. The reason it's so far away is they didn't want anybody to mess it up.
Yeah.
It had to be secret, right? So during a certain time of the year, they're like, maybe it's almost time. Let's walk on out there. So it's so even before, the rocks and the fact that they were doing this is amazing. But, and I guess the reason why I brought this one is to think about, as we start talking about these other technologies, is that, no technology that you see is or that you see the prototype of, or the working example, is the first meme that constructed it, is the first mental construct that was involved in that. There could be generations of thought before that, before someone finally puts it all together and you get a knob to playa, or you get the other inventions and technologies that we're going to talk about. That's why I wanted to bring this one up.
No, it's awesome, because you're absolutely right. There was some sort of precedence for that, in the form perhaps of, lines in the dirt, or wood, or some other, smaller stones. I don't know. But you don't start with a megalithic structure. You
Right.
start with an idea, you start with observations, and then you grow. And in that time, these things took hundreds of years, So, wow, that's just, that's pretty awesome. Way to start off. Jeez.
Figured
Man.
I'd start at the beginning.
Yeah. Man, knocked it out of the park.
So what do we got, man? I'm so interested to hear these.
Well, the thing is, we could stick with Egypt. Egypt is cool.
Okay.
I got some Egypt
got
stuff.
Egypt?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, you have
dude.
got a tome today.
Yeah,
You've got
I
a
even
book
got-
today.
I even got a picture I'm going to whip out later.
Well, then this is all you, man. This is all you, because I can't wait to hear about these things.
Well, yeah, but obviously, you're going to need to jump in on these and let me know what you think.
I don't think I could. I've had already half a glass of wine, and I can already feel myself getting jumpy So
Excellent. All right, so I think let's talk about ancient Egypt. Can't really talk about ancient Egypt without talking about the Bible. And weirdly enough, listening to Creeping Death last night from Metallica, one of my favorite songs, extremely biblical. I was watching a pastor react to Creeping Death, and at the very end, he's like, I have nothing negative to say. That is a story right out of the Bible, almost word for word. And I'm like, yeah,
there it is.
there it is. Yeah, it is the freaking story. Kudos to Metallica for making basically a Bible song. So multiple times in the Bible, there are mysterious objects that are referenced that we really have no idea what they really were, right? And one of those, two of those, actually, they're plural words, so could have been many, many of these things. The Urim and the Thummim.
Yeah, what is this?
So this was something that appeared in the Old Testament. Now, it has different meaning, if you are Mormon, because there is a whole different story regarding Joseph Smith and his use of the Urim and the Thummim.
Wait, this is something that he supposedly had, Joseph Smith?
Yeah, so he had these two seeing stones, and it supposedly gave him the ability to read the tablets.
Wait, so are the seeing stones from Mormonism, are those the Urim and the Thummim? What is it?
Urim, Urim,
Okay.
and Thummim, Thummim.
And those are the seeing stones from the Book of Mormon? Or from that
Yes.
Joseph Smith used to translate the Book of Mormon or whatever?
Yes. However, he adopted them from the Old Testament.
Okay.
So if you look back at Exodus and I think even in Genesis, but Exodus, and then there's some other mentions in Samuel, but they appear all over the Old Testament. There were two separate objects, two things, and they're always referred to in the plural. So it's like there were multiple sets of these two things. They were used by the high priest to reveal the will of God. So you could actually ask these things questions, and God himself would answer through these objects.
Is it kind of like the I Ching or something like that? Like it's maybe like symbols that... Is it like reading the bones or something? Like, could it be something like that?
So that is one interpretation, but it does not fit with the stories that are actually told about it, or the names, or what I believe to be the actual history of it.
What do you believe to be the actual history?
Well, so people have said, it's kind of like little sticks, and you toss them down, and you read, it's like divination, or what is it called, claromancy?
Claromancy,
where you
yeah.
have priests doing it. So if you look at the words, right, Urim or Orim, there is some debate as to whether it starts with a U or an O. It translates to light, and there's not a whole lot of debate as to that particular translation.
So is it lights plural then?
Well, it is actually the shining things. So people,
shining things.
you know, this is the way it happens with translations, right? They get something and they're like, it probably means light, even though, you know, when you really dig into it, it means the shining things, right? The other, Thummim, has been translated to perfections or truth, but if, you know, you actually look at the way the word is constructed, it can also mean the completed things. So you have the first one meaning
The
shining things, and the second one meaning the completed things.
That sounds like a code to me, like a cipher almost. The completed things would seem to be like a that would be like the book that you would check against, maybe.
Could be, right? So you get, and the way that it actually appears in the stories is that they would ask the question, and then Urim would like light up or flash. So it's not really clear what the Thummim was, but if the Thummim was like a code book, and you're like, okay, 2 slow flashes and 3 fast flashes mean don't do that. Okay, don't do that.
Wait a minute. Could it be Morse code?
Well, or a form of it. I mean, it could be, you know.
I mean, that it's like, oh, God, what if it's like a time traveler sending, or it's, what if the shining, what if that's a screen? What if that's like a LED screen or something?
It could be, it could be like an LED screen. It could be a holographic projection. Yeah.
Sure.
And
it's like, okay, what is that? Wait, what does that mean? Here's all the idea of like the completed things. That tells me that is your cipher book.
Right? I had not thought of that.
That's what you like look to, and you're like, because these are completed, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the completed cipher. It's like when you're because what would you need to decode Morse code, right? You need the decoder, the completed things, and then you need the beep beep, the shining things. You need the thing that goes boop 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 boop, right?
Yep. No, I mean that's actually a really good interpretation of it, because I had not thought of that until just now, but it makes total sense, because I was like, I'm really not clear on what the completed things is. I do have a theory on where the name came from, which I think is interesting, but it would make sense if you had one that gave you the message and the other that interpreted the message.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think that's fantastic. It's just like, you know, plugging one of those things into your car and having it tell you code 5.
Yeah. You got to have the book that tells you, oh, well, what the hell does that mean? Oh, okay. Oh, it means that. Okay, got it.
Yep. Yeah, and that's awesome. I love that. So where did this... So these 2 objects were said to be kept on a priest's ephod, which...
What is that?
Also very, like, people really don't know what this thing is. Some people have said it's like a breastplate that had, like the high priest would have a breastplate, and there would be the 12, like, jewels, one for each tribe. And an ephod, though, really is more of like a belt. And these 2 things were said to be kept in a pouch on the ephod. So they really could be in a pouch on the belt. But if you look at an ephod, it has been described as a belt. It's also been described as a girdle. But if I'm thinking pouch on a girdle, I'm thinking like an apron.
Okay.
Which, you know, you could extend to masonry.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
You know, so you have a little.
So you're thinking that this could be where the Masonic apron came from
the high priest's vestments, basically, or part of the high priest's vestments.
Now, I wonder why would you need to keep this? I almost feel like this is like a. I feel like we're talking about a radio here, man.
Some kind of communication device.
It's a communications device.
And they treated it as if it was a very, very real thing. Like, these were real things. You could literally walk up to a particular high priest who had them, and you could get the will of God just by asking questions. It was a common thing. It was like asking somebody to make a phone call for you. It was not a big deal. It was treated as if, oh, everybody knows about this. Come on. Like, this is common. We can totally do this.
Yeah, man. That's so. Is this something that this is something that the Israelites had? That's the idea. So then that would be something that the Egyptians would have had. Then we're saying.
Yes, correct. So the concept and the reason that I think that Thummim was originally translated as truth is that the Egyptians, the judges, actually wore a symbol of Ra and a symbol of Mat. So we had, light and truth. And so there is a connection between, the high priests, the Hebrews actually wearing these symbols and having these two objects, and the Egyptians who had two similar, maybe not the same devices. Maybe they were the same devices. I don't know, but two, like not really a yin and a yang because they're not opposite. They're complementary. Two complementary things, objects, for the judges, right? So, and the judges were all high priests.
So right? There's two things going on with me right now when I think about this. There is the idea that perhaps these are actual things, or the more that we talk about these and the more that we talk about them in terms of like, oh, is this a radio? Is this like Morse code? The more I go to like the cargo cult idea, the more I go to like, is this a symbolic representation of an even older technology, perhaps of the crypto-terrestrials?
Maybe.
That maybe at one time what they're hearkening back to, oh, there was a time when you could actually, it wasn't like a priest. It was literally like people did walk around like we do now, and it's like, oh, hey, what does so-and-so want me to do? What does the God crypto-terrestrial want me to do? And it's like, oh, let me pick up my thing. What do you want them to do? And then it's like, oh, okay, he wants you to go over here, and then they pull out the map and be like, okay, go here, do this, here's the thing. And maybe it's just like over time, like a cargo cult, they just carried this thing on. Because the weirdness about it to me is whenever you run across these concepts that are so far in the past where you're like, no, they couldn't have had this idea, but they map onto concept because it doesn't make sense that they would have it.
Yeah.
But it maps onto technology that we have today. That's always where the weirdness starts, right?
So it's like a kid playing with a toy cell phone.
Right.
They'll get on and they'll be like, hello? Okay.
Right.
And they'll have like a whole conversation.
Right.
Same kind of thing, right? Like maybe these didn't actually work. And at some point they were said to have stopped working and then were lost to history. It was sometime around the time of David. They just kind of vanished from the record. Were never referred to again. Were never used again. So
maybe they were just like, these are bullshit.
Could be. I mean, that could be it. Or it could be that, someone stole them, or, I mean, who knows? But
or maybe they had a leftover one or two or three or 20, and then they just eventually were unable to take care of them anymore, and they just died.
Yeah. Yep. But when you think about all the other, instances of, like the Ark of the Covenant, same kind of thing, where you had God's voice coming out of this thing, the power of God coming out of this thing. There are objects throughout the Bible that have been referred to as having, the authority of God or the voice of God or, whatever. Were these things, either actual things that were being described by people who were witnessing the things, or were they memories of things that may have existed at some point in the past for them? Like you're saying with the cargo cult, maybe they're playing with a toy cell phone at that point and they can't find a working one.
Or there's a third option, and the third option is that the arrow of time is not what we think that it is, and these were prophecies. You know what I mean? Like these were things that someone saw in a vision that were things yet to come. I mean, I look at it this way. So many things that have been in science fiction have inspired people to create those things. You start to wonder, like, is the science fiction inspiring them, or are these science fiction writers actually like really predicting and looking forward.
Yeah, are they tapping into some future, time stream, or are they accessing the collective unconscious and just, figuring out where things are going to go?
And it's got to be a little bit of both.
Or does time not exist at all?
Well, there you go. Or is the arrow of time just not as we understand it to be?
Yeah.
There's the Terence McKenna, the future is pulling us forward, that it's almost like, no, when Gene Roddenberry does the Star Trek thing, and when they have all these things on Star Trek, and then people are like, oh, if only we had, replicators, and then we start the 3D printing revolution. Like, you wonder, are we at the place that we're at with 3D printers if there's no Star Trek replicators?
Definitely not.
Right?
We also wouldn't have, floppy disks and iPads and, everything else. I mean,
so you wonder, where is the arrow of time? Like, because isn't that a vision of the future pulling the present? Isn't that the future pulling the present rather than the past pushing from behind?
Yeah, it's interesting to look at it that way. So in the Bible, there are stories of it actually settling like territorial disputes, and finding people who are lying and, things like that. But if you look at it from the Star Trek perspective, they're just tapping into remote communication. That's all it is, remote communication. They're communicating with somebody off screen.
Yeah, that's a trip, man.
Through magic.
Well, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
It is indeed.
That's one of Clarke's laws.
Yep.
That is, and again, I've said it, and I'll probably end up saying it every week. I do think that we are entering into a new age of magic. Although, and I want to give the dude credit, because the term, it's not my term. I'll have to find it at some point, and I'll give him credit before the end of the show. It's not a new dark age. It's a dim age.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
I Googled it. It's not there.
Oh.
So this is he coined it.
Wow.
And I really believe that it's like, that's the description. And the reason it's the description and not what's different about the Dark Ages, during the Dark Ages, there was no way to get any of that information. Like, it was just not accessible to the average individual. The reason why this is a dim age is because it's totally accessible. All you got to do is walk towards that little light right there, and it'll get brighter and brighter and brighter, but nobody's walking towards it. Everybody's staying in the dark consciously when, like, the light is right there, but it's so dim. It requires so much effort to get to it. So this is what we're entering into. It's not the Dark Ages, it's the dim ages, and I believe it's a new age of magic. And the magic is where the light is.
That's pretty cool. I like
it's
that a lot.
It's awesome, right?
I like that a lot. That's awesome.
Dim age. Oh, so good. So good. I may have to buy dimage.com. Don't any of you people watching live buy dimage.com or buy it, whatever. Sell it to me. It's good. Capitalism. What else we got?
So one last note, and this is just something that is totally a theory of mine. I don't have any evidence other than just putting together clues. So the Urim and the Thummim, so there's agreement on what the Urim means. It means light. It's associated with Ra, right? Thummim, there has been debate as to what it actually means. And there was the one, guy who was saying that it actually stands for the completed things. If you look at the root of the word, TM, the other, major word in Egypt that also had the root of TM was Adam, who actually was the god of completion. And so you have the concept of Ra, the sun, sunrise, light, and then you have Atum, who was the god of completion, also associated with the evening sun and with sunset. So you have Ra being the beginning or the alpha,
and the omega,
and then you have Atum being the end or the omega.
So you wonder if this isn't a callback. Maybe it is a technology, but we've really misunderstood the alpha and the omega. Because when that comes up, it's like, oh, who's talking to me? Who are you anyway? And it's like, oh, I'm that thing that's in that message that is supposed to come through. It's like maybe he's up there with his little radio set. Maybe there are, I mean, that's where you start getting into like the alien shit, right? Maybe there are some aliens out there, or maybe it's crypto-terrestrials from far, far away who are on shortwave radio.
Yep.
You know?
Or hanging out in their like Star Trek style, holographically disguised cave.
Sure.
Watching us from afar, but not that far. Right?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
Love it.
What else do we have? King Solomon. Okay, so talking about the Old Testament, talking about Egypt, King Solomon, he had a thing called a shamir.
Shamir, Schlemazel,
Haas
and Pfeffer Incorporated.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent.
That's for the youngsters. That's Laverne and Shirley. Look it up. YouTube.
Go watch a couple episodes. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's funny.
So King Solomon, right? Interesting dude. We could do like show after show just on the stuff that he did. He was just a fascinating guy. So his shamir, which was referenced throughout the Talmud and the Midrashim, the shamir was reported to have existed in the time of Moses and was one of the 10 wonders that were created on the eve of the first Sabbath. I had to look those up. I was not familiar with the 10 wonders.
I mean, either. Yeah, I don't know about them.
So we'll have to just like break that out and do that as a whole separate thing.
Yeah, that might have to be, the 10 wonders might have to be its own show.
They look awesome.
Now, this is not I don't recall this mentioned in the Old Testament. Is this a Talmudic thing?
Yes.
This is just part of the tradition then?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Fireworks.
Is it fireworks or gunshots?
Oh, no, it's definitely fireworks because I hear the...
You hear the... I can barely hear it.
So
New Hampshire folks, live free or die. Live free or die.
We shoot off fireworks whenever we want.
Whenever we want. Yeah, that's definitely fireworks.
Yeah. Nobody can tell us what to do.
No.
So this was described as a green stone with the power to cut through.
This is the shamir now.
The shamir, yes. Described as a green stone with the power to cut through or disintegrate stone, iron, and diamond.
Holy shit.
Moses himself used the shamir to engrave the Hoshin, which was the priestly breastplate, coming back around to the Urim and the Thummim. So he engraved the Hoshin stones that were then mounted on the breastplate, representing the 12 tribes. King Solomon found out, of course, Moses and King Solomon separated by lots of years.
Yes.
But King Solomon, he was aware of the existence of the shamir because he was into, at that time, what was considered the esoteric stuff, which is like today's esotericism has nothing on the esotericism of King Solomon's time. So he was very much into the weird and abnormal, and he was aware of the existence of the shamir. He didn't know where it was. He commissioned a search. They came back to him with a grain of shamir, the size of a barley corn. So apparently this was not a single device or an object. This was something that could be broken down into smaller pieces. So I'm thinking if it was like a handful of pebbles, he took one, right? I mean, it's that kind of thing, right? There is a sub division of the shamir. So he comes back with a tiny little bit of the shamir. King Solomon then used it in the building of the first temple in the place of normal cutting tools and building tools because it was inappropriate to use tools that could also cause war and bloodshed. So I wasn't aware of this previously, but apparently God did not want the first temple built with the same tools which could cause bloodshed. So no axes, no hammers, no, normal woodworking or metalworking or stoneworking tools could have been used.
So this sounds to me like what we're talking about is probably an emerald laser. That's what that sounds like to me.
Yeah, so there have been people who have theorized that it could have been some kind of directed energy device. It could have been something that was radioactive even because, so in order to use it, right, the material that you were working on whether it was stone or wood or metal or whatever, was affected by being shown to the shamir. So you basically have to expose it to the shamir, and then the thing will happen. When it was stored, it was wrapped in wool and stored in a lead container.
Oh, it's radioactive.
Because anything else would burst and disintegrate under the shamir's gaze.
But is there an element that's that radioactive? That's the question. I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, it would have to be, even if the thing was radio. I'm thinking like, okay, so you know how Cyclops has his sunglasses?
Yeah.
What if it was like that kind of thing? Like they had to take it out and use it, right?
Yeah.
So it couldn't be radiating in all directions. Maybe it had like a door on the lead box. You lift it up and it does its thing, and then you drop the door back down, and it's surrounded in lead. So maybe it was some kind of, I don't even know if like a chunk of plutonium would have done that kind of thing.
No, absolutely not.
So,
like I think we're talking about a device here.
Yeah.
We're talking about some sort of device. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if maybe there weren't large. Maybe it's not that it was a small chunk of the shamir.Maybe it was just a like smaller version of it. Like it was a miniature shamir.
Oh.
Or that there were big shamirs, there were little shamirs, like there are mini shamirs, and then like you could so maybe like they brought him back there like, well, we found the like pocket shamir.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the industrial strength build the pyramid shamir.
It's like the Men in Black, the little tiny gun.
Yeah, this is the tiny shamir, but we could try to use it. It'll probably still work. We could use it for this. And maybe that's what, when I guess it's in like Peru, the megaliths, they're always talking about all these megaliths where they're like, how were these things put together? It looks like almost like they were melted together,
Yeah.
Maybe this shamir technology was all over the place.
Could have been. And, they do talk about specifically regarding those, the construction of those megaliths where really, like, these are not perfect blocks of stone.
No.
These stones are all kinds of weird shapes,
Yeah.
but there's no gap whatsoever.
No gap, yeah.
So it's like, how did that happen? Like how do you basically take these stones, and it looks like what may have happened is a bunch of rough stones that didn't fit together at all, were just all stacked up together, and then they were exposed to something
And it
that kind
melted
of
them
melted them.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were fused
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
in place. And it's like, what could do that? Well, it sounds like the shamir could have done that.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty dang cool.
Interesting.
So, keeping on with Solomon and other biblical weirdness, I want to pull in the Baghdad Battery.
Okay, yeah, I like the Baghdad Battery.
So, the Baghdad Battery, apparently invented somewhere around the 1st century BC. Ceramic pot, tube of copper, rod of iron. Replicas of this have actually produced anywhere between 0.5 and 2 volts of electricity.
Not bad.
Not bad. That's usable.
Mm-hmm.
People have said, and there's no doubt that this works. I mean, you can literally build a replica yourself. There's plans online.
Sure.
Build it yourself, fill it with wine. You get, somewhere around 0.8 or 1 volt.
Okay.
It's like easy peasy. Anybody can do this. It's so that it works is not in doubt. What it was used for.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
is
the
like,
thing. Yeah, what is this for?
Yeah. So what did they do with this electricity? Were they electroplating? Maybe not.
Is that enough for electroplating?
It's
though?
really not. That's
No.
the thing, is you would have to have several of these in series to do decent electroplating. And, it really didn't last that long. Like you would have to recharge it with new stuff because it's not an efficient design. It'll do the job, but it won't do it for very long before you got to completely kind of rebuild it.
Right.
So I thought, if I wanted to build one of these, what would I use it for? And what I came to was I'd want to prank people with it. And then I thought, well, if I was an ancient person without as much moral compass that I have, I could use it to provide a shocking religious experience for someone.
There you go. Yeah.
So
To be like, to have something on your hands and be like, or
No.
sit in a chair or what?
Better yet, hide it inside your statue or your idol or
And
your
then they touch the statue, and it, yeah.
just like the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, wow, if we had a religious object
Right.
and you had one of these batteries inside, they weren't that big, they were
Right.
small batteries. Put one or multiple of these
Well,
things
you
inside.
wouldn't even need to have it inside. Like if you were going to do it like temple style, right? So it's like, because it was in the Holy of Holies, right? It was stationary. You could have underneath it, you could have it on a platform, and you could have underneath it a whole bunch of these in series. You could have enough probably. Well, it's DC. I don't know how much it would take to kill somebody, but
It's the amps that get you, and this doesn't have the...
right.
Yeah, the amps just aren't there.
But you could definitely shock the shit out of somebody. You could scare them.
And it's a feeling they're not familiar with because
Right,
it's
yeah,
not
you'd
like
never
a fire
feel.
burn.
No, you'd never feel. You'd be like, "Whoa, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not burned. I just what just happened? What is that?"
Yeah. I mean, until... Like, most people get their first electric shock, like, through wearing socks in the winter and
Right,
walking across
right,
carpet, And it's like... And it happens when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then even though it is a completely different sensation than anything else in the world,
Mm-hmm.
you get familiar with it and you understand, like, what's going on. Now, imagine you live in a world where there is no widespread electricity.
Right.
Maybe you've never had a shock because you don't own socks or carpet.
Right.
And so there's no static electricity, there's no electrical experience. And then all of a sudden one day, you go to the temple and the priest is there and you've got your religious statue or figure, whatever, and you touch the thing and you get a freaking lightning jolt through you. Like, it doesn't even have to be that strong. Just any kind of, that shock or that tingle. Now you've been touched by God.
Right.
That changes your life.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean that in and of itself makes it a powerful technology for control.
Oh, for sure. And reinforcing the idea that this is a real legitimate experience, because if you come away and, you're like, oh my God, I felt that, or if you see it, like if you get your hand close and you get that lightning bolt, that jumps to your finger. Oh my God.
I mean, see where
that would
you would
freak
want to
people
use
out.
this. You wouldn't want to use this on the average individual. So this would be the thing that would be for like kings or whatever. Like this is the thing that the priests keep in the back. This is how you keep control of the king, right? Is that you bring him and you're like, it's going to be this amazing thing. And maybe the dude's a little skeptical. Maybe he's like, it's bullshit. These guys don't. Fuck these priests, you know what I mean? Especially you imagine like a king who's just come into the throne, probably young, super young dude, you know what I mean, has been a prince, and he's like, these priests, they don't know. They don't. This is all. It's all games. It's all they're like, come go through this, and he's going through the motions, and then it's like touch this thing, and it's like, oh my God, what was? Are you? Well, and then it's like you got him forever.
Yeah, especially if you combine
you
that
got him.
with like the whole oracle thing
Right,
of having
exactly.
somebody off stage
Yes.
talking through a tube or something and you
Yes,
can't see
absolutely.
the voice and it's coming from everywhere. Oh my God, that would be mind-blowing.
Yeah,
Mind-blowing.
yeah. That's like, oh, okay, it's real. Oh,
Yeah.
it's real. What is it? Wait, oh my God. Okay, yes, you guys are actually in charge. Like,
Yeah. You guys can really talk to God? Oh my God, yeah.
see, and I think to a certain degree that there's a lot of merit there in terms of when we're talking about technology and what's the fundamental purpose of technology. And I feel like, we look at today and we look at all of the things that we're dealing with right now. And so much of what we're dealing with is the level of control that the technology that we've been playing around with for the last 10 to 15 years has given to certain individuals, and all of a sudden people are very upset about the amount of control. But, it was all fun and games in the beginning that it's like, oh, you want to share where you are and everything that you're eating with Facebook? Oh, thank you very much.
Yep.
You want to share all the pictures of your kids and talk about what you want and your deepest thoughts and desires? Thank you very much. You want to leave open everything so that we can see what you're shopping for, what you're interested in. I've had situations, and I think everybody. I was talking at lunch to the server at lunch that I had today, and she brought up the fact that just like I have had, where had a situation, and I'm sure everybody's had this as well. I've had a situation where I was talking about something with somebody. I was just sitting down talking about something, and the next day started getting shown ads for it. I'd never looked at it before. It was something I'd never talked about before. And then all of a sudden, oh, here's ads for this thing. And it's like, okay, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah, a lot of times it doesn't even take till the next day. Sometimes it can be just minutes. You know, it's crazy.
And it's like, oh, so the phones are listening to, like, everything's listening.
Yeah.
We're giving up all of this information. And you start to wonder, is the greatest use of technology, is it not the control of other people? Like, we talk about speech 35,000 years ago. Well, isn't that the greatest thing that you can do with speech, is to get other people to do something? Like, is there anything more valuable that you're ever going to do with... I mean, and isn't that what the humans who have the greatest gift of gab, the humans who are the best at speaking, their superpower is they can get other humans to do shit just by talking.
Well, in the beginning, there was the Word.
That's right. And the Word was God.
It's not. There was a dude hanging out wanting to make a universe. No. There was a Word.
Right.
That's powerful. That concept, is pervasive throughout history. And some people are able to use their words to get people to do other things, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Mm-hmm.
And it's only about what the heart of that individual is. But it seems like all of these technologies, that their fundamental use is, in some ways, it's social value more than anything else, right? And I think that that's true for anyone who's an inventor. I've been thinking a lot about this the past couple of weeks, that it's like, fundamentally, it's your value to other human beings. Like, that's the reason why we're innovating. That's the reason why that's the reason you and I started having these types of conversations, and we both were enriched by them, talking back and forth. And then the idea was like, well, other people might, if we're enriched having this conversation, why don't we just we've got the equipment, why don't we just have some mics in front of us and share it with other people?
Yeah.
And it seems like other people are getting something out of it. Oh, and by the way, if you are getting something out of it, go on iTunes and review us. That gets us in the new and notable. I forgot to start with that in the beginning.
5 stars.
5 stars. Well, it could be 4. Maybe.
Are you kidding? Are we 4 stars? Are we 4 stars? No, we are 5 stars.
Yeah, we're definitely 5 stars. So iTunes, new and notable. You could do Stitcher as well. That's good. But we're trying to. I feel like the time, and it's interesting because what I've received back from people in terms of their feedback, it's been all positive on this show.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very different show. People are excited for this show when Friday rolls around. People are excited that, oh, what are they going to talk about? I think there's a kind of a gap now. I think this banning of Alex Jones sort of showed it. And it's something that has been coming up, and I've been thinking about a lot lately, is, what is the motivation? I feel like people are skeptical that someone's got an ulterior motive. Like, it's like everybody's got an ulterior motive. They're not in it just for the pursuit of knowledge. And I feel like so much about what we talk about on this show is the extreme value that, like, a real, true, genuine pursuit of knowledge, that's like the most valuable thing that you could be doing.
It is. And we talked about the very first, 5 minutes of the very first show. You guys can go back and watch it right now. Well, not right now. Later on tonight. Go back and check out the first 5 minutes of the first show. And we talk about that, we want you to do your own research. We want you to think about things that you may not have ever heard of, been exposed to, thoughts you may never have had. Vin and I started this because we've both, we've been exposed to the same, not only the same background knowledge, but also, new ways of thinking about just general life stuff. And, it was through that, honestly, we would probably be like hanging out every Friday night, talking and getting drunk, without the microphones. So doing it with the microphones is our way to say, join us and let's do this together, and send us your comments and your feedback
and your wine,
especially your wine.
Show at vinarmani.com.
Exactly. So tell us what you're thinking. Tell us what's on your mind. Tell us, what the topics are. Tell us what you're getting out of the show. I mean, if you're finding some value, and I have heard from multiple people now that the discussion of the simulation theory, and especially the concept that through science we have now exceeded the resolution of the game, that really resonated with a lot of people. And it's things like that. We have moments during every show where one or the other of us, or both at different times, are just like, what? And it's great, and we hope our audience is doing that too, and we think you are.
I actually don't even know. I don't even know what am I trying to say here? It's hard for me to classify what it is that we are talking about, but I know in terms of the topics, the overall conversation, because it's not a series of conversations. It's one conversation that happens to be broken up over a period of time because we only have so much time in an evening, right?
Yeah.
But it's one long, extended conversation, and it's on a topic. It's on or a range of things that somehow fit into some basket. And I'm not exactly sure what that basket is. And we may not know for quite a while what we would call that basket. But I feel like this is something that has been, clearly it's been embodied and experimented with because, as you say, we've been exposed to a lot of the same information. But I feel like we're finally reaching a time in human society where the breadth of knowledge that's available for us to be able to, go and it's like, oh, Nabta Playa, yeah. And then it was like, I could actually pull up the 2005 study that got the satellite imagery and read the words of the astrophysicist. And it's like, you can dig as deep as you want back to the source material. And it's not even difficult. You can do it from literally from your phone, anywhere that you are. We've reached that point, and I feel like there's going to be, this is the dim age. This is the whole dim age idea. The dim age idea is some great percentage of people have all of that knowledge at their fingertips. Yeah. Well, everybody has the knowledge at their fingertips. It's getting more and more every day that they have that knowledge at their fingertips. It's completely accessible. And yet, they're not going after it. And I feel that it's for two reasons. The first reason is, and I think this is far fewer people than most people think, they don't know or they don't care. There's a group that doesn't care, or for whom it holds no value.
I would assume that, from my perspective,
go ahead.
I would have assumed that would be the largest group.
See, I don't think that's what it is, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
So, I've been doing this. So we are both coders. I've been doing this coding class, Code from Go, right? And there's actually currently a class going on. The next seminar we're about halfway through. Next seminar is next week.
Looks super cool, by the way. Check it out.
Codefromgo.com. The reason why I did this show, seminar series, and what these classes are, is it's specifically for people who have zero coding knowledge. But the idea is to give you enough knowledge so that you can bootstrap yourself. It's more than anything to give you the vocabulary to be able to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Because as being self-taught, what I realized when I really went, and it was a great book that my business partner gave to me. I think it's called Mastery Secrets or something like that. I only needed to get about 3 chapters in until it started sparking off all of these ideas for me that really it was because what it was talking about was it was about going back into the things that you have sort of gained skill in, and how would you explain that, and sort of walking yourself back through. And I realized, man, once I had the vocabulary to ask the right questions, I was able to bootstrap myself to literally any programming language on any platform, like to do all of these things, because all of the information is there, but there's so much information out there that it's never going to be presented to you. You're going to have to passively taking it in, which is what most people do, right?
Yeah.
People will because they don't know what to do. They'll open up their Instagram, they'll scroll through, they'll open up their Facebook, they'll scroll through the feed, they'll open up their YouTube, suggested, you might like. They don't. And they get stuck in a hole. This is where you get people who fall into white supremacy, who fall into black supremacy, who fall into all kinds of weird things, because they get stuck in this hole of the algorithm because they don't know what to actively pursue.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, and I think that it's something that we're doing with this show, is that these are all the starting points. Like, you're going to hear something on this show that you're not hearing anywhere else that you can then... That's a new starting point.
Yep.
Then you don't have to be in the dark, in the dim age. That each one of those starting points is like a step further into the light. And I feel like what you and I have had, what we've experienced is we've been exposed to all of these starting points. Like this breadth that we could talk for, and we will talk for years about these things and be like, oh, I never heard of that. Oh, I never heard of that. Or we'll both be like, oh yeah, I've definitely ran across that one.
Or you realize that you've been memory holed.
Exactly.
That was a freaky ass experience for me last week. After the show, by the way, we were having a discussion just because after the show we talk about random stuff.
We do, yes.
Just like on the show,
Absolutely.
But without the microphone.
We can't help it.
I know. It just keeps on going.
It started that way.
Yeah, it did. It started that way, and it it literally, like, you could drop microphones in between us at any point while we're hanging out, and you'll end up with this show. I mean, it's just the craziest thing. So we ended up on the 60s, and I talked about how, to me, that was like the last great revolution. Like when people were genuinely upset about something and they went out and they protested it. And from my perspective, I was speaking the truth. That was the last time that I was aware that people had really gone out and protested in the streets, and it was a huge deal. And Vin's like, well, what about when I did it? And I'm like, dude, you weren't around the 60s. What are you talking about? You're not that old. And he's like, yeah. What was it, 2003?
Iraq War.
Iraq War, 2003.
Biggest protest movement ever.
Including the 60s. Like, this was bigger
Yeah.
than what happened in the 60s. But
millions of people at a time in the streets of major cities.
Yeah. And billions of people who had no idea what was going on.
That's right.
It's crazy.
This is the new... I think that was the moment. For me, that was the moment when all of this... It was within that all of, and this is what we were talking about, last week, is that all of, I think, the alternative media was born in that movement, in that moment. That was when everybody was like, because CNN didn't cover it, because the news didn't cover it. I mean, if people go and look 2003 Iraq War protests, they will see that, like, world record, Guinness Book of World Record for most amount of people, Literally, like European capitals had millions of people. It like sure we had the Million Man March in D.C. whatever. No, there was way more, and it was unified, and the media did not cover it at all. Any of the media, anywhere in the world.
Which, by extension, means it never happened.
Right. But it did happen.
Yes.
And I think that this is going to be the whole thing about the dim age. You know, we got out of the dark ages with a renaissance, with a return to, really it was a rediscovery of Rome, and by extension Greece, and which then led into the Enlightenment. And I think that what it's going to be is it's going to be a rediscovery of reality. Because so much of what has happened has wound up online. So much of what has happened in the last 20 to 30 years, the original source documents and all of this has wound up online, and yet people are not accessing it. They're not looking to it, and yet it's all there.
Well, it is until it isn't.
Right. Well, this is the thing.
Yeah. So if there was no Wikipedia, what would be the alternative?
This is a good question. Well, I'll tell you, you look at Alex Jones, how many thousands of videos
Yeah.
and how many millions of views, hundreds of millions, perhaps billions. I mean, it's conceivable that Alex Jones's YouTube channel had 1 billion views.
Sure.
Across the life of the Alex Jones YouTube channel.
Well, and YouTube changing the way they count views and all that.
It's completely gone.
Yeah.
I mean, gone.
Yeah, as if it never existed.
As if it never, ever existed.
Yep. And if there wasn't, and I don't even know if this exists because I haven't looked, but if there was not documentation on Wikipedia that this had been a thing and then, wasn't a thing anymore, how would you know?
Like 10 years from now?
Yeah, 10 years from now, there's not going to be, Encyclopedia Britannica entry on Alex Jones. No. There's not going to be, what would there be?
Well, the thing is, it's all a moving target now. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is where and really what the blockchain represents. Also, like IPFS. I use IPFS for all my, Code from Go classes, all of my podcasts for the Vin Armani show, which, by the way, next week is last week. All of the podcasts for this show are all on IPFS, which is the Interplanetary File System, which is a decentralized sort of mesh network. Because the idea is, if you've got it if you have these centralized systems, you can get memory hold instantly. Like, it's the flip of a switch to get memory hold. And I think that this is the new... I think that what we first have to come to, we have the technology, and the technology's there. And it's slowly being rolled out. And I think that the reason why this is all happening so slowly with the blockchain, I think that the reason why people are not getting censorship resistance yet, but I think that this is starting, and I think that a young generation, as they themselves start to get censored by these platforms, will understand the value of censorship resistance, and will understand that we have at least because I feel like what's happening now is we have the framework. This Alex Jones thing, I think the most powerful part about it was that we have a framework for the government will not censor. I actually think we have reached that point. I think we have reached the point in Western culture where governments will not actively censor. They are just going to now rely upon, it's out of their purview.
Sure.
Which is fantastic, because they feel like now they can just pressure the major corporations that are centralized to do the censoring, the Facebooks, the Googles, all of that.
And why wouldn't they? Because they've been in charge of educating the people that are now in charge of those companies.
And so I feel that this is really what it's going to come down to is, before these technologies can really take off, there's going to need to be a lot more censorship, a lot more, and it's going to happen from these corporations for individuals to be like, no, you know what? It's actually worth it to me to go out, and this is what I really see happening. It's worth it to me to go out and buy a separate, and it could be cheap, a separate Raspberry Pi, a $60 computer, and put a $100 hard drive on it and be like, okay, I'm going to be an IPFS node. And then after a while, it'll be built into the router. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
That it's like, oh, yeah, well, if you want an IPFS node, it's in there. Or you want your router's actually mining Bitcoin and it's doing it. This is because what it first has to come to is that people have to value censorship resistance. And the reason that they're going to value it is because we are going to bring something up. People like us are going to bring up something, and they're going to go and they're going to realize it was memory hold.
Yeah. Like this. Like the marches, like, you being out there in the streets in 2003 and me going, what the hell are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because when it happens to you, and it's going to happen again, it's because we're in a cycle, and we are learning slowly but surely, but faster than we ever have before.
Well, are we learning faster, or are things just moving faster? And
well, now you're McKenna. That's novelty theory. That's
Yeah.
novelty theory.
I mean, things are just moving way faster.
Mm-hmm.
There is an elite priest class that can keep up with it, and everybody else can't.
And the thing is that it's actually the weirdest part about it is, and again, I mean, and I was telling you that, like, I'm clearing out a lot of things in my life. Like, my theme, if people have been following me as of late, my theme in my life has been kill the noise, hear the signal. That's been my theme.
I really like that, by the way.
That's it. Kill the noise, hear the signal. Because do you want this water, by the way?
Hey, if you're not going to drink it, I'll drink it.
Take it. I'll just drink wine. No, because there is so much noise.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that noise we are creating ourselves.
Sure.
It's the noise that's coming out of us, like, as individuals. And that's why we can't hear the signal. Sometimes we got to shut the fuck up. You know what I mean?
Or, so this actually, it's a corollary point to that. So my daughter and I were having a conversation, and the point of people who keep themselves so busy to distract
This is it.
from actually doing any sort of introspection.
This is where I'm going.
I don't want to see myself, so I'm going to stay super busy so I don't have to look at myself.
Yeah,
Into myself.
This is a huge issue that I think there is an entire generation that is. I think they're coming into their own now. I mean, this is going to be the existential challenge for millennials.
For sure.
Their challenge is they came up in a time where extreme value was placed on just doing shit. Doing shit and then posting it online, documenting it. Doing shit and documenting it. Well, it's it's pics or it didn't happen, right?
Oh yeah.
Pics or get the fuck out, right? That's the meme. Pics or get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And so that's what their entire generation
Yep.
has been saddled with. They've been saddled with what picture did you post today? Because clearly you didn't live today.
Right.
You were not alive unless you posted a sick photo that everybody liked that showed something, you doing something wonderful. You need to do something. Like, it's a generation of people who are picking up. I mean, I see it. I certainly saw it in Vegas, and I predicted it years ago. I wish I still had these periscopes that I was doing for a while. I wish they stuck around. Maybe they did stick around. Who knows? I think that was at the time when Periscope was like deleting after 24 hours. They weren't saving everything. But I was doing these Periscopes where I predicted, I was like, and it's funny because I read something today and the headline was Extreme Fitness is the New Midlife Crisis. So what I said was that,
Wow.
yeah, I said, oh yeah, it's coming to a city near you. This is maybe it's probably 4 years ago at this point, where I was like, yeah, everybody that you know is going to be competing in fitness competitions, especially women between the age of 30 and 40. This is going to be the new thing. Between the age of 30 and 40, it's going to be all about like getting extremely ripped and then competing in fitness competitions. This is going to be the new thing. And it's really just...
I just got a Bowflex, so...
It's... What it is a reason to take photos.
Sure.
Just like the whole yoga craze, the whole thing about the yoga craze, the reason why yoga took off was not because yoga is fantastic, was not because yoga is... because it's not... That's not the yoga that's even practiced in the West. It's because of apparel. It's an excuse to shop.
Yeah. So yoga as a spiritual and physical practice, as originated in India, is phenomenal, but there were no pictures of it for thousands of years.
I'll have to tell you about my experience as a within a tantric cult of Ananda Marga. One of the many things that I've done. I'll have to tell you about
inside
that.
of a tantric cult?
Well, if you've watched the Ascendant Project, where those ideas come from, was from my
the first 7 episodes is what I did.
You gotta the human social
I'll keep
cycle.
going.
That's from P.R. Sarkar, who founded a tantric cult, a tantric sect called Ananda Marga, and one of the most interesting thinkers. His human social cycle idea is incredibly interesting. And I've found that it maps onto every single aspect of human being. I didn't get far into the weird, like, dogmatic aspect of it, but I got really deep into his more secular, not writing because he never wrote, but like he talked and then people would transcribe it. He was imprisoned by Indira Gandhi for, God, I don't know, something like 5 years. 2 years of that, he was on a straight-up hunger strike. He didn't eat at all, supposedly, for 2 years. But the dude's deep. I mean, deep, has a deep, like, the idea that he was tracing these varnas, these 4 social classes, which happen to also correspond to the 4 suits of cards.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Right? Yep. So it's Shudra, which is the sort of peasants or workers. Kshatriya, these are the 4 classes in the caste system.
Mm-hmm.
Kshatriya, which is like the warriors. Brahmin, which he calls Vipra, which is the priest class. And then Vaishya, which is the merchant class. But see, people don't know that that's also where the 4 suits of cards, which is also the 4 suits in tarot.
Interesting.
Okay. Oh, you didn't know this?
I didn't know this. So
okay. So it's clubs.
Yeah.
So it's the what it's supposed to be. It all comes from tarot. Mm-hmm. Tarot supposedly comes from Egypt. We don't actually know where tarot.
Doesn't everything come from Egypt?
Well, we don't know. Tarot shows up in this weird time where it's like it is a Renaissance thing. We go back to the Renaissance. So here we go, ancient technology. Okay. Divination cards. Tarot is divination cards.
Yep.
But people have to realize that when you play with a deck of cards, you are playing with tarot cards. They're tarot cards. So what you have in tarot is you have 4 suits. Mm-hmm. You have you have major arcana, that's true, but you have 4 suits. Your suits are wands, which is clubs. What all of these are is they are the weapons of a particular class. Now, what's interesting is that they are the exact classes that are the Indian Varna classes. So you have Shudra, the peasants, clubs or wands. These are clubs. These are the weapons of the peasant class. They will just grab a stick. That's clubs. Okay. Then you have swords. This is Kshatriya, the
warrior class.
The warrior class, which is in Spanish or Italian, espada, spades.
Oh,
It's
also the name of a super cool knife that I like.
Yes, it's a sword. That thing you're looking at, the spade, that's a symbolized sword. It's a blade.
Gotcha.
Kshatriya, swords, right? Then you have pentacles, coins, pentacles. That's diamonds. That's the weapon of the Vaishya, the merchant class. Their weapon is money.
Yeah.
So the pentacle is always on a coin. It's a pentacle on a coin in tarot.
Okay.
So that's
I'd never really
gotten pentacle.
I'd never gotten super deep into tarot. This is awesome. So
And then the final
what's the last one?
is cups,
Okay.
the chalice. This is the priest class. This is the weapon of the priest class. And what is it? Hearts. It's a chalice. It's a cup.
Wow. Should we bring in, the story of Jesus and the
Bring it in.
No, I'm just saying, you have the chalice and you have, the cup and,
This is the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, the Last Supper, the whole thing. I mean, hearts, which interestingly enough, the shape of the heart actually comes from an ancient plant that is now extinct, Sylphanium, I think it was called. But I think it was the seeds, had abortive properties. So if you were pregnant and you took the seeds, you would lose the child. And they were heart-shaped. And so when you give people heart-shaped candy on Valentine's Day, it's basically like giving them an ancient version of a contraceptive.
Well, and also the Holy Grail, which is a chalice, or which is a womb as well. So it's Mary. Mary also is the Sacred Heart.
Yep.
This is so the heart, chalice, womb, mother. They're all the queen of. It's always the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the sacred feminine. So this is the tool of the priest class. So what's interesting is here you have this, and living in Vegas, it was so crazy to me that it's like here you have this tool and this symbol that we use for fortune or chance, right? For gambling, for fortune or chance, which is divinatory. It's derived from the divinatory tarot, which is mapped exactly onto nothing else except for the four Varnas, Shudra, Kshatriya, Brahmin, and Vaishya, that exists today as the caste system in India, but which was first brought out in the Vedic literature. So you're like, this thing traveling through.
It's almost like
this is the human social cycle.
It's almost like there's one story.
There's one story. There's one story.
Worldwide, one story. Everything fits into that one story.
And the weird part about it is that no one knows. You would think this would be common knowledge. You would think that, why do we have these four suits? You would think that these questions would be raised, and you would think that people would know that this is where it comes from, that this would be common knowledge. Absolutely not. That's the craziest part about it. The craziest part about it is that this is so common. Like, I would wager that some huge percentage of the people listening right now have a deck of cards in their home.
Oh, for sure.
And yet have no idea where the origination is. And
never thought to ask.
Never thought to ask.
Yeah.
Never thought to ask.
Yeah. Wow. But see, I think that's part of why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why we're here is to get people to ask questions. Like, we are in an age of tremendous free knowledge at our fingertips. But unless you know to ask a question, unless you have any awareness of the things you don't know or the things you want to find out about, you're never going to know. And if you're stuck, like posting pictures of your dinner and, looking at whose status, relationship changed or whatever, who cares?
Right.
Like, dig into something that's meaningful.
And there's this is what I mean, that it's so many things that are sitting right in front of us.
Yeah.
Right in front of us. That these are the things, and I think maybe I'm the type of person that I'm fascinated and I want to know more, and I think what it has to do with a level of security in yourself, right?
Sure.
That you have to. It's funny because my mother listens to our show, and who you've met.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. I love her.
She's a very cool woman, and she said that the great thing about this show is that we are so same like we just had the conversation that we had about the tarot, that it's like you'll bring something up and you've mentioned it before. Well, we'll be like, what the hell? Oh my God, I didn't know that. And I think that there's an inclination and there's a fear and an insecurity that people have about encountering new knowledge.
Sure, or
Something
being perceived as wrong. Or
ignorant.
Ignorant, lacking knowledge, right? It's like this is actually what I think is wrong with science today, is that so many people are afraid of admitting that they don't know what's going on, that they completely exclude things that could be what's going on. So, and that is honestly like one of the best parts is that, there are things that you bring up that I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, when did that happen? And there's things that I bring up, like, you're like,
exactly,
I never heard of that.
Exactly.
And it's okay, because that's why we're here.
It's more than okay. It's glorious.
It's great.
Why would you want to live in a world where you knew everything? That's a shit world in my mind.
Yeah, or you know more than everybody else, right? Like it's got to be a give and take, right?
You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. That's a boring room to be in.
That is the worst room to be in, because then you're not growing at all.
At all. I don't think I talked about this on the show, but I've talked about this with you in not with microphones dropped down. No, but it's like, playing volleyball, this was something that beach volleyball, this was something that really,
this was on the show.
Which, yeah, it's a wonderful and interesting sport. In that you can play until you're very, very, very old. I've played with at least one legend, Bobby Barber, who was one of the originals very early on, and I played him when he was probably in his 80s.
Wow.
And the dude could barely move, but he had been playing for so long. This is what was crazy. They would send the ball over the net, and he had been playing for so long that he would start moving. And this doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I've still been trying to figure this out, but it's like, this is what it truly is to be around an old master of an art form, right? Or of a practice, whether that's a martial art, whether that's a sport. See, there aren't that many sports that you can play into your 80s or games, but I imagine this is what it's like to be around a chess master of that age as well. And beach volleyball is a lot like chess, believe it or not. That they would send the ball over the net to our team, right? Now, mind you, there's going to be 3 contacts that are going to happen with the ball. It's pass, set, hit. They would send the ball over the net, and he would start moving at that point, slowly. He's an 80-year-old man, right? He would start moving to the place that we would end up hitting the ball to. We would end up hitting the ball right to him. And he started moving 3 contacts before.
I think that's totally doable.
Well, it's just you've seen that exact lineup.
Yeah.
And these 2 guys who play like this, you've seen them 100 times in your life already.
Yep. And he had an estimation of your skill level and what kind of techniques you would probably be using. It'd be like taking Bobby Fischer to a college chess club and saying, go get him, Bobby.
That's right.
And he's going to be like, okay, got this guy figured out, got that guy figured out, blah, blah, blah. And he could probably move through, multiple moves in advance. on a scratch paper, be like, okay, I'm going to do this, he's going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, and then it plays out over time exactly the way you predicted because of what he learned, and I think it's the same way with this guy.
Well, this was what I loved about that sport. And I mean, I played in tournaments and, was ranked and rated and the whole nine, was that there were some people who wanted to play because you could choose at what level of. That was the interesting part about it, was that it's a very well defined space, right? So you could actively choose what level of people do I want to play against. If you wanted to, you could play against nothing but people that you could beat up on all day long. You could win every single game.
But there is no honor in that.
Well, it's also, to me, it was incredibly boring.
Sure.
I was like, I'd rather just train with no opponent on the other side.
Yep.
And I'll just train. What I loved was I always wanted to play at the level where, in order for me to win, I would have to play I would have to play at my highest level.
Yeah.
Like, where I would never want to play at a level where I could absolutely not win. That also sucks.
Right.
And it sucks for the people on the other side in the same way that it would suck for me.
Yep.
Right? But to where it's like, if I can elevate my game, and if these guys slack, like, that's the other part about it, right? That I wanted to play at the level where it's like, if these guys second guess me, I'm going to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to play at my top game, and if they second guess me, I'm going to beat them. And I think that's a place that we're in a culture that is so obsessed with not making mistakes. And maybe it's because there's a level of permanence to your mistakes, you know what I mean?
Well, some of that is true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, God, they fired James Gunn for tweets he made 10 years ago. That's ridiculous. But, it also, not only is there permanence, but it also speaks to the level of the external locus of identity that everybody has these days because of social media. Like, they think there's actual value in the number of people that liked the picture of spaghetti that you ate for dinner.
There's not.
There is zero value to that, people. Like, I hate to break the truth to you, but there is no value whatsoever in how many people like the food you eat or really anything else. If you're existing because you want the approval of others, you need to seriously reevaluate your life.
Well, here's the dangerous part about that. The dangerous part about it is, if that's what's valuable, you always have to up your game.
Yeah, and you can't violate the rules. Like, if you happen to say the wrong thing, make the wrong joke,
no, but
eat the wrong
the
food.
problem is that you will. Like,
Sure.
this is the problem. The problem is that if what it is that you're after the external approval, well, you can only do what you did today. Like, so if what you did today got, I'm not even going to use the number. Like, what's weird is like being on a TV show. I've got all these. I was thinking about this today. I'm like, who are all these people following me on Instagram? Because I never post pictures on Instagram. I recently posted this picture that was actually a very old picture that my youngest brother took. We were in my house in Vegas, and I'd given him these speed lights, and he was like, he had figured out this really cool way of taking these pictures. I took this picture. I had never posted it before, but like I say, my whole thing has been about, like, kill the noise, hear the signal. So it's a picture of me in a hood with, like, the shh sign, like my.
I saw that. Very cool.
Right?
Very cool.
So this is an old picture. This is like probably like 4 or 5 years old.
You look like the assassin from the video game.
This is what people say, Assassin's Creed, right?
Yeah.
So I posted this picture on Instagram, and it got like, it's got like 500 likes or something like that, and all these people. And what's weird is, and then my private messages start blowing up, and all of a sudden, and I'm like, this is the weirdest. The thing is this: if that's what you're after, because if that's what you value, I never post on Instagram. If that's what you value, then the next time when you don't get that same amount, that 500 likes, and I know this because I've watched it happen with like co-stars of my show and all of that, then you have to post another and another and another, and then the next one has to be even crazier, and then you have to have less clothes on, and then it has to be in a more exotic locale, and then it has to be here and here and here.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you're spending your entire life looking for the perfect Instagram photo because you're chasing that high.
Now imagine
You're chasing a high.
Now imagine this happening to you when you're 12.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's a nightmare.
This
Absolute
is what
nightmare.
I'm saying. Well, I witnessed it. Believe me, being in Vegas, I witnessed it so many times to where, yeah, then the next thing you're doing is you're going out and you're getting some kind of weird fucking surgery, and then you're doing this sort of thing, and you're just, and there's the problem is that the crowd is fickle,
Yeah.
and they will move on very fucking quickly.
And they'll turn on you for things that you may not even know you're doing wrong.
Of course,
Yeah.
because that's part of the game.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun. Part of the fun is watching you fall.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Watching
part of
the fall?
Watching the fall of the mighty.
huge.
Oh my God,
Huge.
that is entertainment.
Also-
We're about to see it with the president of the United States.
How we've not seen it already, I have no idea. But
because he's a badass, but he's about to get it though. He's about to get it. And I called it about a month ago. I was like, oh yep, they're coming for his ass.
so also Ancient. I mean, that's been around forever. People have like the whole.
Of course. Well, Akhenaten, we've talked about it on this show.
Akhenaten, Greek tragedies. The whole idea of Greek tragedies was
Oedipus.
Fall
Oedipus. Yes,
the hero.
absolutely.
So yeah, it's just, and the problem is, it's gone from high art and literature to the lives of children, where
Yes.
they feel invalidated, they feel bullied, they feel like their lives don't have value if they didn't get as many likes today as they got yesterday. And very bad things end up happening because we are not teaching our children the right values. Like whether or not they even have an Instagram or a Twitter or a Facebook account or whatever, to me is a ludicrous concept.
Well, I think that's going to flip on its head. And it's the most unfortunate thing for millennials, I think, is going to be that they came up in a time when social media was valued.
Yeah.
I'm seeing younger people, right? Weirdly enough, the audience of even this show and my show, the Vin Armani show, weirdly enough, younger and younger people, I'm talking like freshmen in high school, all of that, are interested in these ideas. And because I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a flip. Like that millennial generation is unfortunately, I think, a lost generation.
Yeah.
That came in a time of social and cultural experimentation that really fucking went wrong.
Yep.
That was a real big mistake. And I see young people, because they're realizing that, oh, you're telling me by doing this social media shit that I'm actually giving up my privacy? Well, who likes their privacy more than teenagers? Who wants their privacy? Who wants to not be tracked more than a teenager?
Right. And they're also, so the first generation of people that had access to the internet basically from birth, were still new to the whole thing. But
exactly.
now the kids that are coming up now are already accelerated.
Yes.
They're faster
Yep.
at everything
Yep.
than we ever were.
Yep.
And you're a lot younger than I am. So, I mean, if they're faster than me, they're faster than you, they're faster than friggin'. So I think honestly, that's part of why they're interested in our show, because we're bringing up things that other people don't talk about. It's done in a, semi-skeptical way. And, honestly, we're not here pitching aliens. we're sitting here
With
going
crazy ass hair, fucking ancient alias.
That's right. Oh, Giorgio Tsoukalos. I love that guy, by the way. If I ever meet him, I'm definitely going to have a beer. But, dude, seriously, you should think more rationally about stuff. I do, I will provide, I love digging into stuff that baffles scientists.
Yes.
I am honestly shocked that more things aren't being looked at. And I think that's really genuinely what might be resonating with the younger audience is, hey, I've been taught all this stuff in school. I didn't know there was an alternative theory. I didn't know maybe there were other options. Right. I was shown these things as facts, as unchanging truths. And now I'm finding out that maybe it's not. Maybe there's another answer.
Imagine straddling that. I was talking about that today. I'm saying, with the server, I had this conversation. We came up in a time where we had to learn the Dewey Decimal System, for God's sake.
Oh, right? My God.
To go into the library and search through cards to then find a number on a book and then go find a book in the fucking library.
So in case our audience isn't aware, back in the day, we had paper. And there would be these tiny little cards that had actual ink that formed pictographs. We call them letters. And they would be written on the paper. And these paper chunks would have specific cutouts on the bottom. So they could then be mounted into furniture.
Cabinets.
Yes. Legitimate furniture pieces.
Oh yes, she's 28 and I was talking about this with her and she's like, I've never seen that before.
No. Not at all. No. Or phone books or,
Yeah, phone books. Yeah. What the fuck?
Or a freaking phone cord. I literally had to stand there and talk to my girlfriend in front of my mom because there was one phone, it was in the kitchen and it was attached to a cord. Deal with that, younger America.
Right. This is, but imagine straddling, you and I, we've had this gradual transition. We've been lucky. We've had this gradual transition where from the analog world to the digital world, and we've been a part of it.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
we've been building it. It's a gradual transition. Then you've got the millennials who were came up in a digital world, but
it was an 8-bit digital world.
Right. They got to witness the fucking weak ass technologies, the bridge technologies, to be the hot thing. So they but now you've got because smartphones are 10 years old, right? The iPhone is 10 years old, maybe 11. So it's 10. It's 10 years, 2008, right? So kids who are now, freshmen in high school, it's all they've ever known. They were 4 or 5 years old when the iPhone came out. The first time their parents put it in their hands and they played a little game and they watched a YouTube video and did all that. It's never not been a part of their life, and it will never not be a part of their life.
Oh, sure. Unless there's a solar flare.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's so... They are in a unique situation, I think. And I think that that's where the promise really lies, is that unfortunately there's a lost generation who are never really going to be able to step out of... because we're immune to the social media shit. Because we were adults before it happened. I helped build it. Yeah. All my startup gigs were all social media companies in the early days, pre-Facebook, through Facebook, and then even after, you know what I mean? And it's competitors to what's the Groupon? I worked for competitors to when Groupon was the thing. I was working for competitors to MySpace when MySpace, competitors to Facebook when Facebook was all of the, and so it's we're immune to that shit
because we have perspective and context, because
we know it's not real.
Yeah,
we know it's not real. We know that it's no, these are created things that we literally we were literally sitting down with whiteboards what is it that they want, how will they use this, what could we do? Interestingly enough, one company that I started at Whiteboard, went Whiteboard to launch, and then further was a company called LP33 that basically what we built out was they went too far because they were trying to curate content. They were trying to be like Vice and shit. We basically built out SoundCloud.
Wow.
Yeah, it was and it was like the first when Facebook had apps. People don't even remember this. Facebook apps. It was like the first curated music Facebook app. But you could, it was user generated. You could upload this music and all of that. We created SoundCloud. Like, so it was the whole, and I built the whole back end, the ingestion, all of that pre-SoundCloud. So for me, I see all of these things and I see them as technologies. And I see them as understanding that there was a person behind it who built it, right? And I'm still, and I'm building I'm building cryptocurrency technology now. But to that generation, the technology is in the background and the social meaning and the value is what's forefront.
Right. So it's an interesting paradigm, right? Because having come into the internet and social media at the age that I did, I often,
thank you, sir,
have been in conversations when people were like, oh, weren't you afraid of like, getting in a chat room or blah, blah. I'm like, why would I ever go in a chat room?
Right.
Like, legitimately, the only people in chat rooms are 65-year-old men and FBI agents. Why would I ever go in a chat room? I never looked at people on the internet as real people because there's no, like, it's hard enough.
See, but that's a blessing, I think, of our generation.
It is. It's a perspective that we
blessing,
have that they don't have. And, it's hard enough to get to know people and trust people face to face.
Right.
If you are only talking about, characters on a friggin' screen, you have no idea if it's a person, what they're all about, blah, blah, blah.
But for a certain generation,
that's everything.
Their physical life is less real than their online life,
which is mind blowing.
Well, it's interesting because I saw it and I'm seeing it now. I mean, my business Cointex is built on the top of Bitcoin Cash, and like I've been seeing, there's this crazy, weird schism going on in Bitcoin Cash that I totally predicted, and so it's one of the reasons why the Vin Armani show is going away, and I'm like backing off a little bit because I don't want to fan the flames by even really giving an opinion, right? Because people are paying attention to the opinion that I give, because I don't want. What I see is that, and it's so unfortunate, is that people they're losing the thread and they're losing themselves inside of this virtual world. And what's so funny is, so today, so it's been the past week that my mantra has been kill the noise, hear the signal. And I was even talking with my business partner about this, and then today this Wall Street Journal story comes out about Bitcoin Cash and how it's lost 86% from its high. And
which actually means something to them because they're still
to Wall Street Journal. To Wall Street, it means something to Wall Street Journal
because they're old school finance. They
right.
don't understand.
But what was interesting, and again, it's just illustrative, and it's what I'm talking about hear the signal, was that within crypto Twitter and Reddit, the things that are going on in terms of, oh my God, this group of miners are going to release their own, they're going to fork and they're going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And I realized about 2 weeks ago that I was like, I need to stop, because like, if I talk about this, like, I find it's interesting to me. It's interesting. But if I talk about it, I make it more real. It's reification, right? Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it's not real. It's only real to this very tiny group of people who, most of them, don't actually hold enough of this asset to make a difference. Like, because they don't even make that much money, so they couldn't even hold this amount of the asset. So it's like, I read the Wall Street Journal story, and it's like, oh, what's interesting here? Wall Street Journal doesn't even see it. Like, these people are literally like shitting themselves. They're going crazy. They're making enemies. They're blowing up at each other. They're getting so emotional. And it's like, oh, hey, this reporter for the Wall Street Journal wrote about your blockchain and didn't even see any of this that you think is life-ending and world-changing. It's not, guys.
Yeah.
That's the curse. That's the curse of that generation.
That's the thing. It's like the same exact thing would apply to Facebook drama, any kind of social media drama.
Anything.
Right? Yeah. Like, for example, I had a lovely gentleman actually reply to us on Twitter, and, actually he was, I believe, taking offense with our assertion that the speed of light was a variable in a vacuum. You know what? I am not going to participate in a drama, so I pointed him to the research. And I'm just like, hey, it's all good.
Do the research.
Yeah, go read the paper. It's online. Go read it. I have no hard feelings towards that guy. He actually has the exact same opinion, the exact same belief that 99% of people out there have.
Right.
That the speed of light is totally constant,
right,
and there's no variation,
right,
and there's no ability for it to vary.
Right.
I'm not faulting him for having that knowledge. The vast majority of people in the world have that same knowledge. However, there is good reason to believe that that knowledge is not correct. And that's the whole point of this damn show, is showing people that their knowledge might not be correct.
But it's and this is what it's about. It's about going and simply doing a Google search. We'll start you down the path.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. It's about bootstrapping.
It is.
Like, can we bootstrap you? Because it's funny. It's funny because I often feel like, and I know that you probably feel this way too, because I get this from you. To a certain degree, and it's one thing I like about it's a positive and a negative. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. In doing the show, in knowing that there is an audience, you and I can't go fully fucking crazy, right? We can't go fully out there, right? Quickly.
We can go wherever we want.
We can.
It's our goddamn show.
We can. We can. But what I'm saying is that the show is so much better when we walk through it. I think that's nice.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, we have to put, we can go, the vehicle can go 260 miles an hour, but we are keeping it to a nice, slow 153 miles an hour.
Well, what I like to do is I am well aware that, Vin and I a lot of times will finish each other's sentences, will reach the same conclusion. Even when the other person has no idea what's going to be brought up, there will be a jump ahead moment where
happens.
One or the other of us is like, oh, but that is about this. And it's like, yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's awesome. But if we didn't connect the dots, then people would be lost and nobody would want to listen, because nobody wants to listen to something confusing. I think that we do a fairly good job of connecting the dots and drawing like a map for people to get from place to place to place. And
I agree. That's and so that's one of the things that I love about doing this show is, to a certain degree, it slows us down, and I think that there's some value in that, and it gives us a chance to drink wine, which clearly I've had too much of because it's 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay. So as we are signing off,
go ahead. Well, hold on. I think that we have said what our next episode is going to be is the 10 wonders, right? The 10 wonders of Moses. Is this
actually? We have so many things we didn't get to tonight.
Okay. Well,
but
do we want to just do another part two?
Let's do part two. Let's just do part two. Part two. In the meantime,
yes,
I have a challenge.
Okay, go ahead. Challenge.
Right.
I love challenges.
I will provide a gift of some sort, a prize. There will be a prize associated with this.
Okay, let's do it. Anyone
able to properly identify where this came from and what it is.
Hold it up.
You got it?
Good.
All right.
Yes. All right.
Tell me where that came from and what it is, and I will get you something special. I will, if there are multiple winners, I will pick one, and it'll be a randomized drawing of some sort.
Sweet. So that'll be next week. So Ancient Technology Part 2.
Part 2.
So that means I have to come up with another fucking ancient technology.
Oh, dude! And if it's not, and if
You
it's
see,
not better,
you see, I'm the underachiever here because I only came up with one.
no. And if it's not better than the one you came up with, then you're not going to get as many likes.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so everybody, check us out: iTunes and Stitcher. If you're going on iTunes, please give a 5-star review so that we can do new and notable. What will new and notable get you? I'll tell you what it will definitely get. All the people who are live in the chat, it's going to get you a lot more people in the chat to talk shit to. So that will be fun. Go on iTunes, give us a review. It'll get us into the new and notable. Besides that, next week, Ancient Technology Part 2.
Dos.
Part 2. Okay. Well, I guess we're out of here then.
Awesome. I have had a fantastic time. This has been an awesome show. Thank you so much. I love doing this every single week.
As do I. We'll see you again next Friday, guys.